I left the city, I've been browsing, treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 41 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty_DadFF. We're excited. We got a great guest on here, but we have a full house of all of our Smash Accept crew, and we all know the classic Full House jam. I'm going to be the Bob Saget of the group, but the guy I want to introduce first is Uncle Jesse. Jesse, welcome back to the podcast. Nothing like some cheesy dad humor, some Full House. Jesse, how you been?
Dude, I just wish I was as good looking as John Stamos, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're a lot taller and you got the beard going there. We found out beforehand. Right. We found out why don't you tell the listeners how big you are?
Yeah, 6'7". Yep, yeah, big guy for sure.
Yeah, what you been up to, man?
My son, he's a little monster, man. Nothing, man. Just trying. I've been working a lot. I went to night shift now, so kind of adjusting to that. Taking a little bit of time off with the off season, and then trying to, get myself situated with all the rookies and everything. Keeping up with Twitter and all you guys. So, yeah, man, it's been great. I'm looking forward to kind of revamping and recharging the batteries a little bit here, and chopping up with the Smash Accept boys. It's always fun.
Love it. Love it. Speaking of rookies, Mung, I saw your top 12 rookies dropped on Fantrax today. Big news, man.
Yeah, they sure did. My second round will be coming out early next week. I've got a fun Star Wars themed fantasy article coming out on Friday. So if you guys are interested, check that out. But I feel old. I mean, do kids these days even really know Full House? I feel like Elizabeth Olsen at this point is known for Avengers and stuff, right?
Yeah, that kind of hurts a little bit, just trying to date me here again a little bit, Mung, but I'm going to introduce you to one of our older dads here to bring it back down. John, what's going on, my man?
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Yeah, I think we immediately lost a couple of listeners when you threw the Full House on there, but that's all right. We'll bring it back with our guest here.
Yeah.
Doing well. Rookie fever is still at its peak right now for me, but it's still just kind of trying to lock in on my pre-NFL draft rankings. And I think that's really, really important, not just for the rookies, but also post free agency and get a good view on things before the NFL makes its impact. So I'm getting close to doing that and feeling pretty good about it. Definitely looking at forward. We got bringing some noise here. Got some really strong, big personalities in the case of Jesse. So looking forward to it tonight, Mike.
Yeah, a lot of awesome news right now. The biggest one, obviously, Sam Darnold getting traded. And I don't know if you guys saw that, but he threw a party last night just to celebrate, leaving New York. I'm throwing a party tonight just by having this guy on the podcast. I mean, what he's been able to do over the last couple months is fantastic. I mean, he's been on the show before, so you guys recognize him. He's basically everywhere right now, with football guys, with fantasy pros. I tried to talk to him a little bit. And he's like, I'm just doing that, a little podcast and a little writing. And everyone seems to be getting Klugied around here. Dave Kluge, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Appreciate you having me back on. This was I was looking at this crew today, and the only guy we're missing is Mark, from the first show that I did with you guys when we had everybody. So stoked to be back here. Always have a great time with the Smash Accept crew.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was when we did the Smashies, you know what I mean? I tried to break out some of that humor again with the Full House. Wasn't quite as good, as the Smashies. We got Cooter Doodles already saying Dave is the GOAT. I mean, we got all kinds of people tuning in just to listen to what you have to say. Why don't you tell people what you have going on? I mean, your story and what you've been able to do over the last year. I mean, that whole term Kluge, you are everywhere. So why don't you tell listeners, what you have going on and how things have been progressing for you?
Well, I started in the industry about a year and a half ago, and I was just doing it kind of on the side with my job, and I was making a little bit of money here, but, it wasn't really something that was growing. I was just, working in my free time. And then, luckily I had this support of my wife, and I said, hey, I think the only way I'm really going to grow in this industry is if I just quit my job and fully commit to it. So I got to be, writing, podcasting, doing something every single day. And she was supportive of it. So I left my job a while back, just kind of dove headfirst into the industry. And now I'm with football guys and kind of found my path in the industry. So it's been a lot of fun to grow.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see in the group, I mean, we have For Whom the Bell Tolls and Swagman95. Everybody's talking about getting hashtag Klugied. So we're gonna try to keep, getting that trending here. But tonight's episode is gonna be our fantasy, free agent fill in the blanks. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of I'm gonna give you guys a fill in the blank. I want you guys to kind of answer them and see what your best assessment is. So obviously the recent news of Sam Darnold trade from the New York Jets, obviously to Carolina. Now, we're going to talk about the New York Jets will now select blank, and Sam Darnold will go on to have a top blank QB season. Dave, you're our guest. Why don't you start out with this? Who do you think the Jets take? It seems all but certain right now. So when we put the notes out, it was a little bit different. And where do we think Sam Darnold finishes up?
Yeah, I don't even think I need to talk about it too much because it seems like it's a guarantee that Zach Wilson's going to New York at this point. And I've got Darnold slated in to be a top 15 quarterback, which, isn't really saying too much, but it's still a little bit of an improvement from where he finished last year as QB 19. So I don't think that Darnold is a massive upgrade from Teddy Bridgewater, but he's a little bit better. And the return of Christian McCaffrey should help the entire offense out. The one really interesting thing to me is that Robbie Anderson is coming off his best season ever, the first year that he played without Sam Darnold. So it'll be interesting to see if he's able to keep that pace going from what we saw with his breakout season in 2020. A lot of people are already kind of using that as an argument to say that Bridgewater is better than Darnold because, Robbie Anderson had a better season without him. I don't really believe it, though. So I don't know if it was getting out from under Adam Gase's shadow, linking up with Joe Brady, or a combination of both. But I think that we've seen a lot of players that have gone away from Adam Gase and had great careers. So I'm expecting one of Sam Darnold's better years in 2021.
Absolutely. I mean, he just enters. He's now 23 years old. He former number 3 overall pick, goes from having an offensive where he had bottom 2 in every single thing, but from offensive line to wide receivers to running backs. I had 15 written down as well. That's exactly where I have him. John, we've talked about Sam Darnold in the past, about the talent he has there. Where do you see him? We're all pretty much in agreement that it's going to be Wilson at 2, but where do you see Sam Darnold finishing this season?
Yeah, and I'm kind of in that mid QB2 range. I had him like 17, 18, so I think we're pretty close here. I definitely think clear upgrade over Teddy B, no question there. Getting out of the Gase system, he's still very young. He still really has all the tools, reason he was such a high draft pick. And I do think it's good for DJ Moore and certainly Robbie Anderson and the experience they had together in New York, I think is good. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's also interesting, this landing spot for Darnold landing in Carolina kind of means that there's going to be yet another team that's going to get their rookie QB, because remember, we had Carolina kind of pegged to maybe take one there. So now it means, and I hate to say this, Mike, because I know you're a Drew Lock guy, but it could mean somebody like Denver now trades up with Atlanta or gets Fields or Lance following there. Yeah, Dave would love to see maybe Chicago trade up and get in the mix there, and add some competition for the Red Rifle there in Chicago. But I think that's also kind of another ripple effect from this Darnold signing here.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, you gotta look at when the Bears put their publicity thing out there. Now they're saying he's going to be their starter, but when they first made the move, they put Andy Dalton QB1, and just those numbers, that that name and that designation don't really go well there. I mean, obviously, what are you thinking here in Chicago right now? I mean, obviously, you got the Bears helmet there behind you. Before we move over to Jesse and talk about DJ Moore love, talk to us a little bit about the Bears.
Yeah, I don't really like what they're doing here, especially, and I know Mung is also a Bears fan, right? And so it's something I'm not too crazy about, and everyone makes the argument saying, well, it's only $10 million, but really what it is $18 million for Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. We weren't able to offload that contract, so it's not just a $10 million contract. We have a lot of money tied up in a quarterback's position without even a guaranteed quarterback, so it's not something that I'm really too thrilled about. Still, the one thing that you can guarantee on is Allen Robinson still getting 150 targets and 1,000 yards. He's been able to, whether it's Matt McGloin, it doesn't matter who's throwing the ball to him, he's going to produce. So I think that Allen Robinson is still locked in as a wide receiver 1. And Andy Dalton, I don't even think that he's got much use in a super flex league at this point. You can throw a dart at him late in the round and one of the later rounds and hope something happens, but I'm not expecting too much from Dalton.
I like that. Jesse, DJ Moore, you and I have been talking about him for a long time. You know, he's still just 23 years old. Fill in the blank. DJ Moore should be ranked as a top blank wide receiver, given the offensive minds and the potential quarterback upgrade here in Carolina.
Yeah, I like him in the low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. You know, like you said, he's still 23 years old. Last year was interesting though, because him and Robbie Anderson kind of switched roles. You thought Robbie Anderson was going to be downfield threat. You know, DJ Moore would be my kind of the short, intermediate, you know, run after the catch, and they used him kind of as a downfield threat. He was one thing we want to see Sam Darnold help was he had a 56% catch rate. You got to see that jump up for DJ Moore, you know, and that's going to hopefully help his production because you don't know if his targets are going to go up from 118. So, you know, you kind of just hope that, you know, Darnold's a little bit more accurate with his throws, and, you know, that helps. And DJ Moore got to clean up the drops because he had 10 last year. So hopefully, you know, those things kind of go hand in hand, and that kind of keeps him in that high end, you know, wide receiver 2 range. Yeah, I'm a fan of the guy, but, you know, there's a lot of mouths to feed over there. And, you know, we are expecting a kind of big jump from Darnold. So hopefully, you know, all of those things kind of, you know, play well for DJ Moore.
I love it. Mung, you get the role now to tie it all together. Talk to us a little bit about what you think Darnold's able to do this year and the rest of that Carolina offense. I mean, let's just bring it all together. I mean, what does this mean for Anderson? What does this mean for DJ Moore? What does this mean for McCaffrey?
Well, I know I'm usually the person who stomps on, you know, rains on your parade, but I don't really have a hot take here. I think, you know, Darnold is a mid-range QB2 where you guys pegged him is pretty accurate for me as well. And the thing with DJ Moore is I like him a lot, but in redraft, I think that there's going to be a lot of value with Robbie Anderson because he actually outproduced Moore last year. And if those roles stay fairly similar, I think right now I'm in the middle of a best ball draft, and there's about a 2-round gap between where Moore is going in the 4th, 5th round and where Anderson is going towards the 7th, 8th round. And I think there's going to be some value to take there. And of course, not much to say about Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he's still the locked-in number 1 running back for me.
Yeah, that's a great point, bringing redraft in there. I mean, when you look at Dynasty, the last draft that I did, DJ Moore went in the early 3rd, and Robbie Anderson was still available in that 8th, 9th, 10th round in the drafts that I've been doing. So big discrepancy there, and still pretty young in his own mind. Anyone else have anything they want to add to the Carolina situation before we move on to another QB change?
Mike, I got something I think that we need to get out of the way here on this pod. Dave, can we get a definition for Klugid? Getting Klugid. Help us out with this. I know our listeners are getting Klugid as we speak, right? So help the listeners a little.
And make it easy. We have a lot of dads on here, and when I said Klugid in the beginning, you know, they got a little, what's going on here?
Man, I wish I could even tell you. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Open Bar podcast or not, but J Mike and Gabe, FF Man Bun, those guys are just wild. It was one of the weirdest shows I've ever been on, but we had an absolute blast. You know, it ran for over 2 hours straight. Drinks were flowing, and it just started. They said, how do you say your last name? You know, is it Kluge? Is it Kluge? Is it Klug? Nobody really knows how to say it. And then it just kind of took this life of its own there. I'd recommend checking out the show. It was kind of a running joke, and it just kind of stuck from there. But yeah, I don't even know. You know, Kluge means whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah,
I love it.
When John and I were talking, we might even throw it in there more for some of the old school Disturbed fans to get Klugified, you know, on the show tonight. And mix it up a little bit. So
let's see if we can get it trending right now. All right, listeners, let's see. Klugified. Let's get it trending on Twitter. Go.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the next guy we're going to talk about who's been trending on Twitter before, Ryan Fitzpatrick, now moves over to the Washington football team. So now we have Terry McLaurin, who has had some fantastic finishes, finished as well as wide receiver 12 this past season, just has been on the fringe, right, of breaking down. Now with the Ryan Fitzpatrick, you know, a little bit of that Fitz magic going on, 2021, Terry McLaurin will finish as the wide receiver blank. Dave.
Yeah, I've got him at the wide receiver 14, and I know that seems like a kind of a weird number to point it at, but that's right now what his expert consensus ranking is. And I did a deep dive on Terry McLaurin for the last week, and I wanted to know, you know, is he overvalued? Is he undervalued? And what I found is that he is pretty accurately valued for what he should put up. I feel like the Ryan Fitzpatrick signing absolutely elevates his value and helps him out a lot. But then you've got the Curtis Samuel signing that's going to cut into his target share a little bit. So I just wrote this article that came out this morning on Fantasy Pros. But what I did is I looked back at Ryan Fitzpatrick's career and wide receiver ones that he's played with. Now, he's only had 8 seasons where he's played 10 or more games as the starter. In those seasons, his wide receiver one has averaged 84 receptions, 1,079 yards, and 7.1 touchdowns per 16 games. That is almost, except for the touchdowns, but that's almost exactly what Terry McLaurin put up last year. So that's kind of what I'd expect. And then you've got Curtis Samuel coming into the mix. And like I said, that's going to affect his value a little bit as well. Curtis Samuel's seen 202 targets over the last 2 seasons. Last year, Terry McLaurin saw 134 targets, and the rest of the wide receivers in Washington combined for 162. So Terry McLaurin on his own almost out-targeted the entire rest of the wide receiver core. So it's a weird situation. You can't deny the upside. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to press the ball downfield a lot more than we saw Alex Smith or Kyle Allen or any of these other 6 quarterbacks that McLaurin has played with over the last couple of years. So the upside is undeniable. He could absolutely finish as a top 3 receiver, but I think it would be crazy to ignore the risk there. So I think that drafting him as a wide receiver 1 is silly. I'm not taking him over guys like Allen Robinson, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper. I think that he's going to finish as a top end wide receiver 2, and that's about where he should be drafted.
And that's great analysis, because it's like, it feels like he's a back end wide receiver 1 when it comes to dynasty, and when it comes to redraft, he's a high end wide receiver 2 that you might be able to get a little bit later than some of these other wide receiver 2. So that's great analysis there. Mung, we're going to go to you now since we went to you last. We got this full house thing going on. I'm not going to play the theme song again, but Mung, Terry McLaurin finishes as the wide receiver blank in 2021.
Yeah, I was going to say 15. So I'm pretty spot on with what Dave has. Again, no hot takes from me just yet on this show. But, when you look at Washington as a team, they were the 7th most pass-heavy team in the league last year. I expect that to change a little bit. They already had a pretty strong defense with their defensive line, of course, Chase Young. But then, this free agency, they go out and they add the top cornerback, William Jackson. So that's going to shore up the secondary a little bit. I do expect them to be a little bit more run-heavy, which is why, John, I know you'll like this, on Antonio Gibson heading into 2021. So I don't expect McLaurin to become some elite top 5 wide receiver, and high-end wide receiver 2 sounds about right to me.
Yeah, I mean, Fitzpatrick's just fun to watch in comparison. I mean, the story of Alex Smith was fantastic, but the lowest, average of targets anyone has had in the league. And now we move into, I know, Jesse, I know you're a Fitzmagic kind of guy. What does he do to Terry McLaurin, and does he put you into that wide receiver 1 territory, or are you agreeing with Dave and Mung? He's that high-end wide receiver 2.
As a bearded guy, I got to, stick with my beard, fellow beard. I like Fitz. I think there's a little misconception that he's like this because he's so fun to watch. We get such a kick out of watching him. He's good. He'll help. The big thing is last year, F1's catchable rate was 74%. That's got to come up, because I don't think his targets are going to come up. He's competing with the most competition he's had with Logan Thomas, emerging, and then them bringing in Samuel. So his targets, I don't think, go up from 130. His catchable rate got to go up, and then you're going to get more touchdowns, I think, because he had 4 last year. So I think that touchdown goes up to 7. That might help him out. But I think his numbers are pretty much where they're going to be. Personally, I think you guys have it right on the head. 15, 16, 17. Dynasty, he's a low end 1, high end 2. I think you guys nailed it. I really do.
John, we can't talk about Washington without Antonio Gibson, right? You thought I was going to talk to you about McLaurin,
Thank you.
Let's get that mandatory Gibson talk in.
We got to, and thank you for that. And everybody knows I love me some Antonio Gibson. I actually love all of this for Gibson. And, sometimes Mung and I actually agree on stuff. But look, Fitzy's going to be pushing the ball down the field. The whole offense is better. We got Curtis Samuel in tow. I think they add maybe another weapon or 2 in the draft. There's even some rumors they could go early on a wide receiver. Oh, by the way, that's not going to help F1. But all of this does mean more trips to the red zone, more scoring, probably a little bit faster paced offense versus old man Alex Smith, the dump off king, right? And so we all know that Gibson's going to get the goal line, goal to go, and he's just going to get more quality touches there. And so I think we could see scoring up for him and him continue to crank out in what is ultimately a run-heavy offense for the football team.
So before the season, and I talk about this all the time, insulated trades or pivot trades. And last year, before the playoffs went in, I traded DeAndre Hopkins for Terry McLaurin and what ended up being the 102. So I'm going to end up getting in a super flex league, potentially getting Fields and McLaurin. Now, what I want you guys to do is we've talked about, McLaurin's right where he kind of belongs, but who's a wide receiver maybe we should pivot back towards and maybe get some insulated capital, add one of these first round picks or get a young up and coming wide receiver who you're willing to move back just slightly to get. Let's start with you, John. Who's a guy that if you're not wild about McLaurin, let's say you have him on your roster and we say, he's in that range. I mean, McLaurin's 20, he's going to be 26 years old, a little bit older, going to get to that age cliff in a year or two. Who's a guy a little bit younger you're willing to move back off of right now?
Yeah, we just saw so many quality wide receivers coming out of the draft, and we're just about to see a bunch more. So I'm still collecting rookie picks because this wide receiver class is outstanding. But in terms of other younger wide receivers that I'm out trying to get right now, I'd still love to see if you can't get CeeDee Lamb anywhere. I think we're going to talk about T. Higgins some as well. Both those guys looking strong. I think that a value play right now is also Jerry Jeudy. We do need to see what Denver does decide to do at QB, but I really like him as a prospect, still very young. Those are some of the guys that stick out to me. And then maybe a guy that's not as young, but a guy that I am trying to still pivot to, Mike, that I think we're going to come back to. That's Michael Thomas, still very undervalued.
A lot of foreshadowing there by, Rookie Fever John. Dave, who's a guy that, let's say our listeners aren't wild on Terry McLaurin. We're fairly bullish, but they want to move back. Who's another guy that's in that range that you'd be potentially moving back off of and trying to add a little bit extra value on?
Well, John mentioned him briefly, but Jerry Jeudy, absolutely. He had all around a pretty good season. He was able to separate. He just couldn't catch the ball. And I think that's something that's going to come with him. I mean, he's got his footwork. He looks like somebody that's been in the NFL for 8 years already. He runs clean routes. He's able to get open. He already has that kind of like veteran leadership ability as a rookie. So I know that his rookie season was underwhelming, but in my opinion, that just means that the opportunity to buy him is wide open right now. So Jerry Jeudy is somebody that I'm still going after, even after an underwhelming rookie campaign.
Jesse, Mung, anybody you guys want to add to that? Younger wide receivers you're looking to buy that are slightly less valuable than McLaurin right now that you can get a little bit more on top?
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have Cortland Sutton. So our first disagreement here, I guess. To me, Drew Lock is unafraid to kind of just chuck it around. And to me, that screams more, beneficiary being Cortland Sutton here. I'm not so sure if the timing routes are Drew Lock's thing. I know, Mike, you're pretty high on him, but he's been pretty inconsistent up to this point. But I am confident that he's going to chuck it downfield to Cortland Sutton. Other guys that you might be able to get, plus a small piece even, Brandon Ayuk. If you can flip McLaurin for Ayuk plus, I would certainly consider that. And potentially, slightly older guy, Amari Cooper, who never seems to get much love. But if you can get him plus a second for McLaurin, I would certainly do that as well.
Yeah, before I pass it to Jesse, people are going to revoke my dynasty analyst mind. They're going to take my card away completely because you guys keep saying I love Drew Lock. I love Drew Lock at the value. I've been taking him as my QB3 in all my Superflex drafts. All right, let's not just say I love Drew Lock. I was all off him last year. Jesse, who's your guy?
So as you guys know, Laviska Shenault, man, he's in the tier that I think Brandon Ayuk and Jerry Jeudy are in, but he's getting the biggest quarterback upgrade of anybody with hopefully Trevor Lawrence, and he's getting what we think is going to be a great coaching upgrade in Urban Meyer. So I'll take Laviska Shenault. I know some of you guys aren't as bullish on him as I am, but if you can trade F1 for Shenault and late first, mid, I mean, dude, you got 102. So I mean, obviously you're not going to get 102, but maybe, late first, early second. I mean, that's a trade that maybe I pivot to. I really like Shenault. I love the outlook in Urban Meyer's offense. He fits exactly what Urban Meyer wants, run after the catch, bubble screens, slants, intermediate routes. That's his go-to. So I'm on Shenault all day. If you pivot off of McLaurin, I think Chenault's a guy that you can kind of lean to.
One of the guys that I'm totally into and I've been buying in the offseason, and this is the next guy I'm going to move on to after John kind of foreshadowed a little bit. T. Higgins, let's say if the Bengals are actually smart and they take the offensive lineman and not Chase, T. Higgins is a top blank dynasty wide receiver. And then on top of that, but in redraft, how close should we be taking T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd? So let's start here with Dave. Dave, how high up do you have T. Higgins in your dynasty rankings? And what kind of discrepancy value-wise are we looking between Higgins and Boyd when it comes to redraft?
Yeah, this might shock you a little bit, but I got T. Higgins as my wide receiver 15 right now in Dynasty. He has all the makings to be an absolute alpha, and he showed it last year. He was great even without Joe Burrow. So with Joe Burrow, he averaged 4.8 receptions, 70 yards, and 0.4 touchdowns per game. Without Joe Burrow, he still averaged that same 4.8 receptions and 0.4 touchdowns per game, and he was still putting up 56 yards per game. So he can get it done whether it's Burrow or not, and you've got to assume that he's going to put up similar, if not even better numbers in his second year. So I think that he's a great dynasty asset. We already know he's 6'4". He's got blazing speed. He's got good hands. He has all of the makings to be one of those true alpha receivers, which, you know, you're not seeing with really any of the incoming rookies with the size or anything like that. So I'd almost even prefer Higgins over to a lot of the incoming rookies that are coming in right now. As for Boyd, I mean, he's just been consistent and, you know, doesn't really flash all that much. His 2020 campaign wasn't too great, but before that, he had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I think Higgins is the much better option in redraft and dynasty. Mung already called out the kind of 2-round difference between the two of them. I think Boyd can still finish as kind of a low-end wide receiver too, but he's not somebody that I'm really going out and targeting. I feel like there's other guys in his tier that have much higher ceilings.
Yeah, I mean, that's wide receiver 15 is a fantastic area. You know, that's the second highest anybody that's come on here. Izzy Alcafaz had him as the wide receiver 12. You know, so I mean, T. Higgins has that type of elite upside. Mung, T. Higgins is a top blank dynasty wide receiver for you this as far as right now.
I'm not quite as high on him just because, you know, I came out with an article a couple weeks ago about guys to potentially consider selling in dynasty before the NFL draft. And T. Higgins was one of them because there are a lot of rumors that Cincinnati's interested in reuniting Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow this year at number 5 overall. That's a direction that they could go. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think the risk is certainly there. So I've got Higgins a little bit lower around wide receiver 20 to 22. Boyd obviously carries that same risk if they were to go in that direction. So I've got him around wide receiver 30. I don't quite see the ceiling for him, even if they do go with an offensive lineman that early in the draft. So I'm a little less bullish on them just because of the risk there.
John, same question for you. T. Higgins is a top blank dynasty wide receiver in your rankings.
Yeah, I'll split the difference here. I've got him as about a mid wide receiver 2 range, probably 17, 18-ish. And it is because the risk is there. Mung's right. I know that this question is kind of like splitting the draft community in two right now. Do they take the top O lineman? Do they take Jamar Chase or potentially Kyle Pitts if he's there at 5? There's a lot of smoke building that they might do this though. Joe Burrow, as many of you may have heard, went out and is actually pushing to get Jamar Chase and reunite from the LSU days, and you could see it happening. So if that does happen, and clearly like target share and a lot of mouths to feed becomes the big issue for both Boyd and Higgins. And so I think you got to factor that risk in and be careful there.
Sorry to our Bengals listeners, but if this is a quality organization, they aren't listening to their quarterback who just got injured, who just lost the last half of his rookie season, who they're investing. Right. You get the tackle to protect the quarterback and let T. Higgins move up. Jesse, what do you think the Bengals do here? And if they don't take Chase, how high do you have T. Higgins?
They got to go. Yeah, they got to go tackle. I mean, it only makes sense. You don't want to, David Carr him. You get him all gun shy and just, he already had the knee injury. We can't. You got to protect the dude. I have Higgins in the 16, 17 range. I think you guys are spot on. The only thing I would say is, in redraft, maybe you can, pivot off of Higgins and then go for Boyd later in the draft because, obviously his ceiling isn't that elite upside that, Higgins may have or that blow up, top 5, honestly. that Higgins may have. But you're going to get kind of safe floor with Boyd. He's a good, solid, wide receiver, 2, 3. I kind of like that idea, maybe pivoting a little bit like we were talking about with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. You can kind of do the same thing with Boyd and Higgins, just pivot off of Higgins and go to Boyd. That's only in, redraft. Dynasty, it's all system go, take Higgins, man, and run with him. Because, he has that elite upside to a young, elite quarterback. That's what you kind of want, That's not what you kind of want. It's exactly what you want.
Tonight's show, we're all about taking people's last names and turning them into verbs. People are getting card, people are getting klugied. It's all kinds of fun stuff. The next wide receiver who definitely, last year disappointed everybody, and Michael Thomas was a huge disappointment. But given from what we've seen from Jameis Winston do in the past, we can expect him to surpass blank catches and rank inside the top blank wide receivers in 2021. Jesse, I don't feel like I haven't started with you on any of them yet. So what do you like Jameis Winston? If I go to Mung, he's going to just start talking about Taysom Hill and take a proverbial dump on Jameis Winston. But I love Jameis Winston just for the fun of it, the fun factor of it. But how many catches do you see Michael Thomas, and where would you rank him in 2021?
You got to lock him into, top 10 wide receiver if he's healthy, if he has, Winston, because Winston had, Godwin playing at a top 3 level, and he also had Mike Evans producing. The thing with Mike Thomas though is a little interesting. I'll read this off to you. So he had we all know that Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill. So he had 4 starts with Hill. He was on pace for 148 targets, 120 catches, and 1,300 yards. I mean, that's insane. Those are great numbers for him playing with Taysom Hill. I think he's locked into a top 10 role. I really do. I mean, it's hard to kind of pivot off for him there. Winston was a nice addition just for fantasy value. Real life, the guy's a train wreck. Like you said, he's just kind of fun to watch and, watch like dumpster fire. But yeah, man, I'm all systems go. He had Godwin produce at, the top 5 levels. So yeah, and Michael Thomas should be at that level too.
Dave, are you that bullish on him? Are we thinking he gets back to anywhere close to where he was, with Drew Brees?
Yeah, I'm even a little more bullish than Jesse is here, and you guys might think I'm crazy on this one, but I don't see there's no reason that we can't expect 125 receptions in a top 3 finish. Last year was a very weird year for him. He was injured, Drew Brees was injured, but Sean Payton likes to throw the ball. Drew Brees averaged 618 pass attempts per season before the last 2 years when he started to get injured like crazy. So Michael Thomas is the clear-cut wide receiver 1. Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway, no disrespect to those guys, but they are not going to really push for any sort of competition. So right now, this is Michael Thomas's team, and I think that he can have another huge, huge season. The other big thing is that he wasn't getting that ADOT. He wasn't going down the field and catching balls with Drew Brees. He was catching everything across the middle. Now you got Jameis Winston, who's going to improve his ADOT, improve his scoring opportunities. So while everyone's starting to kind of fade Michael Thomas, and I understand why, there's an emotional aspect to playing fantasy football, and he burned a lot of people last year. So I understand why people are fading him. I had 0 Michael Thomas shares last year, so I'm going to be all in on him heading into 2021.
Speaking of Michael Thomas shares, John, we did the episode last year where we started talking about the trade value of Michael Thomas coming back in after his injury. I bought him up everywhere, and I'm hearing from what Dave and Jesse are saying. I'm excited to see what he can do this year. John, how excited are you? I mean, we wanted it to happen at the end of last year, right? He was the guy that was going to win us some championships when he came back. Didn't quite happen. Is he going to do it this year?
Yeah, I'm in. I have him as my wide receiver 6 right now for the 21 season, and I do think he can clear 100 receptions. I definitely see that for all the reasons that Dave just went through. He's going to be a target hog, whether it's famous Jameis or Taysom Hill. And he's going to get a little bit more downfield. I could see an uptick in touchdowns and red zone targets as well. So I do like where he's headed, and I think he is a great buy. And I think it's going to start to become a bit tougher to buy, but it's still not too late. And I'd get in on it if you can. I've certainly been buying. It's all about the value, of course, but I think it's a good buy.
All right, Mung, round it out here for us a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about the quarterback situation and what you think that does for Michael Thomas and where you have him.
I really don't have a whole lot to add here. I think you guys pretty much covered it. Jesse mentioned the splits with Taysom Hill, which I was going to bring up. Regardless of who's under center here, whether it's Winston, Hill, if they trade for Bridgewater, whoever it might be, I think that Michael Thomas is going to get absolutely peppered with targets. I have him penciled in for 120, 130 receptions. Remember going to 17 games, so 130, 140 isn't out of the question. And really, I have him in that back end wide receiver 1 range. I'd be pretty comfortable taking him. And then while we're on New Orleans real quick, I tweeted this out a few days ago, but I think it'd be really fun for that offense. The Saints are sitting at 28 overall right now. If they took Terrace Marshall there, put him in that big slot role, I think that offense would be a lot of fun to watch.
All right, since we got some of the best, smash accept guys when it comes to trades, you guys love breaking stuff down. I made 2 Michael Thomas trades in the last 2 weeks. So I want you guys to look at these real quick. One of them, I dealt Michael Thomas, and I am a contender. I got Keenan Allen and the 107 in a super flex. John, hit that one up for me first. So what do you guys think of that?
Keenan Allen 107, I think is actually that's pretty strong for a competing team. And you need to nail the 107 to make it worthwhile.
No,
but those are the kind of trades we like. Yeah, we like that. Who am I talking to? Bob Saget, Dynasty Dad. Yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it right.
Hey, yo, T King's in the house. What's going on? Dave, what do you think? 107 and Keenan Allen. Is Keenan Allen going to put up close enough numbers to Michael Thomas that, you guys know I like to make those insulated trades, right? I talked about trading Hopkins last year, which was a bold move at the time, for McLaurin in a first. That first became 102. Now we're talking Keenan Allen and 107. And in this year's class, with 4 potential quarterbacks going in that top 5 to 6 range, I feel like something nice falls. Oh,
yeah, that 107 is a nice spot to be in this year. You could end up with Jamar Chase. You could end up with Kyle Pitts. Did I freeze up? Did you guys lose me?
Yeah. No, we're good now. We're good.
All right. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot that you can do with the 107. All right. I feel like there's a lot you can do with the 107. So I really like it. I think that Keenan Allen is primed for a, great remainder of his career as long as he can stay tied to Justin Herbert. And then with how top heavy it is with quarterbacks, you can end up with Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, Devonta Smith, one of those guys at 107. So I absolutely love that move because I don't think that the, step down that you're taking from Michael Thomas to Keenan Allen is really all that big.
Yeah, Keenan Allen, I mean, we talk about it in multiple episodes. He's one of the cheapest guys you can buy in Dynasty that's going to put up wide receiver 1 numbers. Jesse and Mung, we'll break down the second one here. I bought Michael Thomas for Cooper Kupp and the 202 in a super flex. Start with you, Jesse. Is that a move that you'd be willing to make?
Yeah, I like that move a lot. 202 is a decent, pick in super flex. Tight end premium or no tight end premium?
Tight end
or just
premium.
super flex? Oh, tight end premium. I mean 202 where I kind of like to value that tight end, the Penn State kid. I can't think of his name right now offhand, but I love that move for you, man. Thomas is a huge upgrade over Cooper Kupp, man. So yeah, I'm a fan of that trade. If you gave up 107, I would have said, but dude, 202, I think that's a great deal for you, man. All day.
Ooh, I'm liking the sound of this. Mung, bring it home and say you agree as well. No.
Yeah, I think both of those trades were hashtag smash accepts. I love them.
There we go.
I like Cooper Kupp, but it's a wide drop off from a guy like Michael Thomas, who's a clear alpha and is going to get, a ton of target volume.
We got to bring that cowbell back soon, John. But I mean,
yeah, we do.
Based off of hearing these kind of trades and what I'm seeing on Twitter, Michael Thomas is a buy. I mean, we're looking at, he's still, he's 27, going to turn 28, but he's still a wide receiver 1. And so much in the Dynasty community over the last maybe 2 years, it's really switched where Twitter forgets about you, right? You have one bad year and they write you off. You're done. And Michael Thomas has been, before this past year, was the wide receiver 1. He was the guy that everybody wanted. In Dynasty, how high up would you guys rank him? So we're all in agreement. He's a top 10 wide receiver for 2021. Where do you guys have him in your Dynasty rankings?
I've got him at 7 or 8. So in that back end wide receiver 1 range.
Yeah, I'm with Mung. I've got him as a back end wide receiver one. I'm valuing him a lot higher in redraft, but the risk is there that Drew Brees is what supported him and made him the good player that he was. So there's a lot of risk associated. I'm really liking his outlook for 2021, and he's a great buy now. And if he can smash it in 2021, it's just going to help his value even that much more.
I love it. You know who else is a good value right now? And this question is from Mung. If Arizona forgoes drafting a running back in this class, Chase Edmonds is a blank running back. Like what level, how high up do you guys see him in rankings and in blank in value picks? So let's say they completely forego taking a running back. Chase Edmonds is how high in your rankings, guys? John?
Yeah, so I actually put quite a bit of research into Chase Edmonds. So just give me a minute on this one. He was the big winner in free agency, first of all. And it clearly does come down to the draft. Arizona didn't bring any running backs in. In fact, they upgraded their O-line as well with Rodney Hudson. And so if Arizona doesn't draft a running back in the first 2 rounds, I think he is a high RB2 and could maybe sneak in as an RB1. Another interesting thing I found out, Arizona does not have a 3rd round pick. So it comes down to picks 16 and 49. And 49 is really going to be the danger zone there for Chase Edmonds owners. But I think the big 3 running backs that we talk about could all be gone by then. So, look, I think the Cardinals do have to bring a running back in. Ultimately, the depth chart is non-existent. It's Benjamin, Jonathan Ward. And so if they take one, and who they take is huge here. But what we've seen is Cliff and Steve Kim come out and totally validate Chase Edmonds. They think he can be a starter. They say they want to give him a big opportunity. I saw some guys as recently as today. Mike Clay came out and has him projected as the RB14 for 2021. Mung, I know you said you saw him going in the 4th round of best ball drafts. That's clearly showing the potential there. But for me, I think it's going to come down to touches with Chase Edmonds. And we really haven't seen him get that. He is efficient when he gets it. In fact, on a per attempt basis, he was number 5 in fantasy points per attempt. And in the 9 games when he got double-digit touches last year, he averaged 13.4 points per game. That placed him 17th. So he isn't exactly built to carry the load, but he's been banged up. So I think that what they're going to probably end up doing is bringing someone else and get a complimentary back situation there. But look, if he does increase his touches by some, and I think we could easily see that happening, then yeah, I think I'm back to putting him at that high RB2 range and feeling pretty good about the value there.
That's great analysis. And I know when we did our running back rankings several months back, he was somebody that you and I both were saying, and Mung as well, we're like, go out and get this guy, just make an offer right now. He's not the starter now, but if he gets that opportunity, sky's the limit. Dave, how high up would you be willing to rank him if they do not get a day 1 draft capital or even a day 2 draft capital in Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, I'm spot on with John. John said just about everything that I was planning to say. You absolutely knocked that question out of the park, John. Good job. But I mean, the big thing is I think that they are going to use that 2nd round pick and address the running back situation. But I'd have no problem putting him in as a high end RB2, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there. He's going to walk in right now. If the roster doesn't change, he's going to walk into easily 200 plus carries and have all of the volume in the makings to be a low end wide receiver 1. The problem is, though, he's 5'9", and I don't know when the last time we've seen a workhorse back at that size. So John already alluded to it. Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim, they're coming out and saying all these great things about him. Part of me wonders if that's smoke and mirrors for the guys that are drafting behind them that are going to think, well, maybe we can wait on a running back. And I think that's smoke and mirrors that they're saying, we're content with Chase Edmonds just so that a running back does fall to them with that 2nd round pick.
Easy on the 5'9" hate. I mean, Mung put a tweet out there today of Tariq Cohen and Rondale Moore, I believe both being 5'9". We'll transition right over to Mung. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And then where do you have Chase Edmonds as far as dynasty value right now? It's kind of tricky, like we have in the Higgins situation where we don't know what they're going to do. Are you buying? Are you selling? Are you holding? What are we doing with Edmonds?
I think this really comes down to timing because for me, I see this as pretty good news. I'm starting to come around on Edmonds because, like John said, Arizona has 2 top 50 picks, and then they have a 5th round pick and 2 7th round picks. So if he clears that second round, then he's good to go. My bigger concern right now is that guys like Todd Gurley and James Conner are still floating around in free agency. And we've seen that Arizona is kind of willing to take a chance on some of these older veterans right now. They signed J.J. Watt, they signed A.J. Green to a 1-year deal. I could see them taking a flyer on a Conner or Gurley. But if we're entering, the week of the NFL draft, if it's a few days before and they still haven't signed anyone, then I would be pretty bullish on Edmonds. I would have him around RB20 in redraft. And I would be as aggressive as potentially paying a late first round pick for him. I do think that he's going to have a pretty high ceiling in that offense if he doesn't see any competition here.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was hoping to hear is I saw in multiple group chats in my group me leagues where people are like, I'm willing to sell Chase Edmonds for any first. I'm personally selling for a first if I am at this point, if I can get a first anywhere across the board because we're not sure about that situation. Jesse, are you buying or are you selling Edmonds here?
No, I think you guys all nailed it. I think that the biggest issue with him is that he's only had over.
We all keep saying that, right? Like we're all like stealing each other's notes. Like this has been great. Like everybody's like just trying to find scraps after going the whole way around and everybody's just
what's happening? We're all getting Klugified. That's what's happening. We're all getting Klugified tonight. That's the deal.
I was driving home after I said that to you, John, and I was like, I put on, Stupefied, and I was singing Klugified in the car, and anybody that was driving by, they must have been like, this guy's
I can already see that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what I do. I'm the dynasty dad, Go ahead, Jesse.
No, you're good, bro. The only thing is he's only had three times in his career with over 10 carries. 3 in 3 years, not great. He's been productive in those times. What I would do is, if you listen to you guys, you bought him cheap and then you flip him for the firsts. That's the perfect thing for me. Like, I don't want to pay any of the value that is going to need if he is the guy, right? I don't want to pay that ADP. I have no interest in it. But what I do have interest in is flipping him. Like, why wouldn't you sell him for mid-first if you can get one? Sell him for, a top 6 pick, top 8 pick in Superflex, tight end premium. I mean, that's what I would do with him. If you have him on your roster, I mean, it's great. It's a great piece for you because you didn't pay anything for him, and now you have a potential, top 20 RB. So I love that aspect. I'm just not going to buy him. I'll either sell him or hold him. I think that's where I'm at with him. But if I did have him, like I said, if I can't sell him, I'm perfectly fine with keeping him and potentially locking him in the flex or, RB2 spot.
Yeah, we all like the player. It's just like Dave said, historically speaking, from his size, what you've said, historically speaking, he hasn't had the workload. Some of those things could possibly be a sell. Mung just left because we said that. But all right.
Pissed him off at that one.
he's like, I'm out. Oh, there he is. He's back. All right. So 2 questions here to end out the podcast. And this has been a blast so far. We'll start with you, Dave, and we'll go around. What free agent will have the biggest impact on his team this year, and as far as fantasy speaking?
All right. Well, first of all, I apologize if I'm stealing anyone's thunder here because I feel like somebody else is going to have this answer. But Kenny Galladay is going to completely reshape the New York Giants roster. I feel like I used the term alpha receiver earlier when talking about Kenny Galladay, or I'm sorry, when talking about T. Higgins, but Kenny Galladay absolutely fits into that as well. Last year, Evan Ingram led the team in targets, which is just embarrassing. Sterling Shepard was forced to play as a wide receiver 1, and that's not who he is. So with Sterling Shepard going back to being a wide receiver 2, that's going to be great for him. Being lower on the totem pole is going to help Evan Ingram bounce back, I think, although I'm not as crazy about that. But Daniel Jones, his strength is throwing the deep ball, and that's where Galladay thrives. So you've got Saquon Barkley coming back. That's going to open up even more opportunity for him. I think that Kenny Galladay is just going to completely reshape that team. I think that impact that he made is going to be astronomical, and I've got Kenny Galladay slotted in as a low-end wide receiver 1 next year.
So right. we had Ryan McDowell on 2 weeks ago, and him and I both had taken Daniel Jones in the Scott Fish Bowl, and we were both excited about it. Can we see right now Daniel Jones' superflex value is completely suppressed? I mean, is this somebody that could bounce back with Galladay, with Saquon back. I mean, what are you willing to buy in on Daniel Jones yet?
Absolutely. I'm buying so much Daniel Jones as much as I can this offseason. I think that, he's a great value right now. He struggled last year, but I mean, like I said, Sterling Shepard was his number one receiver and wasn't even really the number one pass catcher. Evan Ingram was the number one pass catcher. And then they had a mix of Wayne Gallman and Devonta Freeman and all these other guys coming out of the backfield. So I think that when you already have Daniel Jones, who's a pretty talented quarterback, and now you get to, what I believe he's heading to year 3 now, and then you just plug in Saquon Barkley and you plug in Kenny Galladay. I'm absolutely buying Daniel Jones. I feel like just about any quarterback could succeed with that offense around him.
Yeah, and Steffi Smalls paid me to try to get you to say something nice about Daniel Jones. You know what I mean? We're trying to get that
I'm
going.
sure she did.
John, who's your buy? Who's your biggest buy when it comes to this free agent? The biggest impact from this free agent class?
Well, first of all, Dave's making me kind of regret selling my Kenny G concert tickets.
Right
after that. Yeah, I'm almost like ready to start buying up Kenny G after hearing that. I do think he's going to play some sweet music there with Daniel Jones, and Dave's got me rethinking, maybe making some buys there. Actually, I'll throw it back over to our boy Dave here in his honor tonight. Allen Robinson just re-signing with Chicago. He's hard to see, and I actually doubted Dave on this. I think that we actually debated this on a pod, and I was telling Dave it wasn't going to happen, but it did, and Dave nailed it. And he just does so much for that franchise. I don't even really think you can understate that. And imagine, Dave, if they actually do find a way to bring in a quarterback and Allen Robinson's still there, that would be just so much fun to watch. I wish that so much for Allen Robinson. But look, like Dave said, doesn't matter who's throwing to him. Andy Dalton is an upgrade. It is truly the best quarterback he's played with. And so
that's sad. That is so sad.
I was trying not to laugh. To get through that sentence. But
John, I'm picturing this like we have a picture of Allen Robinson, like, hey, I'm waiting for my best quarterback. And then we show a picture of him like with Tom Hanks from Castaway with the beard and everything growing out, still waiting. It's not
let's
happening.
Make that happen. Yeah, let's start working on that. But I think that is for me the big one.
Yeah, I mean, we were all hoping to free Allen Robinson, but as a Bears fan, I'm sure you're thrilled to still have Allen Robinson there for sure.
Well, the other thing is everyone's saying, free Allen Robinson, and yeah, he could have gone and played with a better quarterback, but there aren't many positions where he's going to be, just as much of the wide receiver one as he is. I mean, Darnell Mooney, I like Darnell Mooney, but he's not going to really cut into his target share at all. So for fantasy purposes, this might really be one of the best spots for Allen Robinson.
It's a great point.
For sure. Jesse, who won free agency for you?
You know who I think it is? I think it's Tua, honestly. I love what Miami's doing. I'm not the biggest Will Fuller fan in terms of actual fantasy, player. I never buy him, but I love the aspect of adding Will Fuller, right? And then they have pick 6, they have pick 18. They're going to add another weapon. I really like Tua, man. He was left for dead. They thought that they were going to draft their quarterback. They moved back to 6, well, whatever, 12, then back up to 6, whatever it was. And yeah, I really think that he's a really good buy in 2 QB leagues, man. Super flex, whatever. Tua. As odd as that kind of is, because people kind of flying over his carcass all off season. But yeah, I'm a fan.
Love
of
that one
Tua right now.
Yeah, is T King still on?
Thanks, bro.
Loving that in Miami right now with Tua. I love that one, Jesse.
Yeah, we've been all over Tua. Jesse, you and I have been, we're in a group chat with Goat District and a bunch of other guys, Dynasty Outhouse, when it comes to collecting cards, and we reference this sometimes. But Tua was one of my biggest buys. Like, I bought a ton of them. I just bought a PSA 10 optic hollow today of him because I feel like they're going to bring in more weapons, and Tua's going to have that opportunity. You know what I mean? So I love that for my card industry, right? But Mung, who is your free agent win right now?
Mike, you're going to love this one. For me, it's not so much a signing as 2 departures. And those 2 departures are Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith. We talked about Michael Thomas getting absolutely peppered with targets. It would not shock me if A.J. Brown gets close to 150 catches this year.
Yes,
I mean, the Titans want to run that offense through Derrick Henry, but their defense was pretty awful last year, and they really didn't do a whole lot to fix that this offseason. I don't see, barring injury, I don't see any way that A.J. Brown finishes the season with less than at least 120, 130 catches.
So usually you guys throw the shade and say I love Drew Lock, but every episode I say how much I love AJ Brown. Jesse might be the only person that loves him more. Jesse, AJ Brown is your dynasty wide receiver, and my answer is, where's yours?
One.
That's what I'm talking about.
You can't go any higher than one, bro.
I had him as wide receiver 1 for a couple months, and people have been talking trash on it. The dude is going to get peppered this year.
It's hard to argue right now.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Dude,
I just took him as the first wide receiver off the board in a startup last week, and I've got no regrets whatsoever.
Yeah, like we've done 4 startups. I took him in all 4. I did trade him in 1, but I gave up AJ Brown in the 109 for Christian McCaffrey, and I was like, I just ran with it, so I was okay. It kind of went against, when you're playing in a listener league and people are taking the guys that they think you're going to take, it's like AJ Brown, someone I was trying to get everywhere. Completely in the same topic, but a little bit different. What under the radar signing is the community not talking enough about? We all talk about those big names, but Dave, who's that one guy that we just aren't paying enough attention to?
And this one, I almost feel kind of dirty saying it because I was kind of giving people crap about it the day of the signing, but Mike Davis in Atlanta could be a sneaky good move for fantasy players. He's kind of in that same territory with Chase Edmonds, where I think that they're going to end up addressing that in the draft. But for the sake of conversation, let's imagine that they don't. Todd Gurley punched in 9 rushing touchdowns last season. So playing indoors for over half your games, having Julio Jones, having Calvin Ridley to stretch the field, that's just a dream for running backs. So I don't think that he's an especially great running back, but sometimes you've just got to look at the opportunity. And right now, the opportunity is there. Brian Hill, Ito Smith, they aren't really going to threaten his workload all that much. So Mike Davis is a guy that I'm really, really liking right now.
Yeah, our listeners know we've been hyping up Mike Davis a lot. And as soon as he signed with Atlanta, like I didn't even see it, but my league mates, I had 5 different trades of people trying to get Mike Davis. If you want Mike Davis and that's your guy, don't make an offer straight up for Mike Davis. Try to get Mike Davis added in somewhere. A lot of times you throw that out there and you're like, what do you want from Mike Davis? And then people are like, wait, what? They're trying to figure that out, right? But then you pick another guy on their roster and you say you want this guy. And then they come back with you and be like, why don't you just, if you can add in Mike Davis, we'll call it a deal, and he has the opportunity. We saw what he did. I mean, he was a borderline RB1 with McCaffrey out, put him in Atlanta, same kind of thing. John.
That's awesome. That was like that moment at the end of the Full House episode where like Bob Saget steps in and gives like the life lesson for everybody. That was just what happened just now. You were dropping knowledge.
What's the other uncle? We got Uncle Jesse in the
Uncle
corner.
Joey. I think I'm Uncle Joey. I do the forced jokes and everybody,
like a couple
we
weeks
have the laughter coming in.
A couple weeks back, you were my doppelganger. Now you're clean shaven, like Uncle Joey. We'll get that in there.
Yeah.
I don't remember he had a catchphrase. Maybe you do, but we can date ourselves even more. Yeah. I'll go.
If you
I'm
could
gonna
maybe
go do a marathon when this is over.
During the edit, though, every time I say something, you could put the audience laughter getting piped in, like they used to do. That'd be great. No, all right. So, in all seriousness, my guy here, Chris Carson, perennially underrated. No one's ever talking about him. Resigns in Seattle. And I'm quality RB2.
Is that a fire alarm?
Yeah, I got people just loving that take. They were just blowing me up there. No, Chris Carson. I don't know if you guys saw this video that he put out. He one-upped the Derrick Henry push-up video with the chain and the band, and he did it with 1 foot. So I almost want to challenge the FF Fit community. Can anybody replicate what Chris Carson did or one up Chris Carson? But he's a beast. He's tough. He, of course, Seattle wants to get back to running the ball again. Russ is getting kicked out of the kitchen. It's not going to be cooking as much. He's going to be handing the ball to Chris Carson. And remember, 2019, he cranked out 1,500 total yards, 9 touchdowns. Even in limited action in 12 games about this past year, he still put up 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's involved in the receiving game, and he's going to be perhaps the centerpiece of the Seattle offense, as much as we kind of hate to see it for Russell Wilson. So talk about a value buy. His ADP, if you look at it and what you can get him for, is still very cheap for what I believe will be maybe even a high-end RB2 for this coming season. That's mine.
I like it. From Uncle Joey to Uncle Jesse, who's your biggest? What's the one signing that no one's talking about?
I had a tough time with this question when you asked it because a lot of guys kind of went back to their homes. There was I really like what I'm a Charger fan. I really love what the Chargers did this offseason. It's not sexy. They added 2 offensive linemen. And we don't talk about offensive line enough, only in the sense of, Cincinnati with left tackle. But they did add Riley Reef. I don't know how good he is at this point in his career. But anyway, the Chargers added a center. They made him the highest paid center in the league. And they added a right tackle. I really like that, man. You're gonna get a bump from Eckler, you're going to get a bump for Herbert. You kind of want to keep that intact. It's not sexy, but I had a really tough time with this question. And I like Juju back in Pitt, honestly. I think that's another kind of underrated one. I think that, he's going to be locked into 100, 120 catches. And, I think that does put a little damper on Deontay Johnson and them. But, yeah, I like Juju back in Pitt. That one was a little hard for me. I don't know. You guys made some great ones, but I don't know if I came with that one too great.
All right. Mung, who's your guy? Who's that one signing? I know you usually get those guys. You did it all year long, and we got so many positive compliments about, Mung's like, hey, take a look at this guy. This is the guy. These are the guys you want to pick up, and you nailed it. I'm putting pressure on you, but who's that guy right now?
Yeah, I'll do a few quick hits. I won't talk too much about any of them, but Kalen Ballage, I mean, if Pittsburgh somehow doesn't draft a running back, I could see him getting some goal line work. To Jesse's point, he showed a little bit with the Chargers last year. Dave already took Mike Davis, so enough said there. This morning, the Bengals released Gio Bernard, so that means Samaje Perine, who they just re-signed for 2 years, might be the backup to own if Joe Mixon were to miss some time. These guys are all super cheap. Tevin Coleman, I know his name is mud now, but you can get him for a 4th, something like that. He went over to the Jets with Mike LaFleur coming over from San Francisco. He knows the system, so there's a chance that he could start 2021. And then Darrell Williams. The Chiefs released Damian Williams. He's the number 2 right now. He should get quite a bit of work alongside CEH.
Got to stay active in your dynasty leagues right now, and those are the kind of moves you make, trying to get those guys added on. I promise we'd keep it close to an hour because, Dave, I know you got some other commitments. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate it. We love how much you're doing in the dynasty community. Again, why don't you tell everybody what you have going on and where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Football Guys and Fantasy Pros. You could also find me on Friday afternoons going live. We've got a really fun, group of guests coming up. Not really a football show, more of like a get to know an analyst type show. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DaveKluge_FF.
John, great to have you back on again. No one brings the dad jokes like when we're both on here. Everybody, all the other guests run away and they make fun of us afterwards. But we bring the heat.
Yeah, we all the forced jokes, the puns, we'll keep bringing it, and I love it. I think it's safe to say we all got Klugified tonight. A lot of fun, Dave. Thanks for coming. You can find me right now on Twitter at Dynasty_trades, and love mixing it up with the community. Love just seeing when someone in the community like Dave does take off. That's the kind of stuff that I'm about, helping you out with trades, your teams. And just again, love being back here with the full house crew. I'll say tonight.
We're not changing the name of the podcast, that's for sure. Just picturing just playing that with it. I want it, John. We talk about this all the time, but I want to get a video edit of like all of that. Like they do the intro of the song. You know what I mean? As they're going down San Francisco, and then
no question, yeah.
Get Uncle Jesse's face on there.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse, it was great having you on again. Why don't you tell everybody what you got going on and where they can find you as well?
I appreciate you guys having me on, man. It's a blast. I love chopping it up, man. All group chats, hilarious and fun, man. And it's always knowledgeable, man. I always learn a little bit from you guys. So, I look forward to always getting on. I'll probably be doing some rookie spotlight again with the Fantasy Authority. I'll do that again. And you guys can find me at Dynasty Humble Senior. Send over your questions, anything. I'm always, I don't sleep at night. I work overnight. So if you ever just have any questions or just want to talk, man, I'm around. And yeah, man. It was fun chatting it up, and it was a blast, man. Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you just said, John, you said guys that are blowing up and doing things in the community. I mean, Mung, you're all over the place on Twitter, and you're killing it as well. Why don't you tell everybody, where they can find you and anything else that's popping up here in the next week or so?
Yeah, it was great talking to Dave and Jesse again, and as always, Mike and John, you guys as well. But I love these roundtable type chats where we can kind of just riff off each other. I hope we do more of these. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, I just put out my first round of Superflex rookie rankings. You can check that and all my other stuff out at Fantrax. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at FFA_Mung. That's MENG.
Thanks again for tuning into the Smash Accept podcast and enjoy the process.